Hey,
Hi,
Olive. Hi. How's it going?
good. I was wondering if I was on the right call.
Yeah.
There's nobody here.
Well, it's 5:30 on the dot, so maybe everyone's just a little bit late.
Yeah, because usually people sign on, a little early.
Yeah. Yeah. So how are you? We'll just check in.
Oh, I've just been so busy. I'm just kind of like, just slowing down today, and I'm going to be away all weekend.
Oh,
So
yeah?
if I don't respond to any messages, I'm off to Toronto to be an assistant for a chakra transformation retreat.
Wow. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so that sounds, yeah, so that'll tie me up for the weekend, but it'll be really good. Yeah.
Cool. And that is this with a teacher that you know or?
Yeah, it's with Rihanna Costa. And so I took a few online courses with her, and I've been, to her studio for a few classes and this and that. And she's really awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Chakra transformation.
yeah.
Huh.
So I took it online, and now she's offering as an in-person retreat.
Oh, okay. So you kind of have an idea of what you're gonna do and
Yeah, so she talks about the chakras, and then you kind of experience them yourself, and do a little meditation and journaling and that kind of thing.
cool. And so is it Friday, Saturday, Sunday or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nice. Cool.
yeah,
That sounds awesome.
yeah, yeah. So it's been really, really busy. I've been meaning to respond back about your expenses, and so it's all in my head. I just have to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No rush. No rush. And have you been busy with work or with life or?
yeah. Life, work, the course, yeah, just all kinds of stuff. But I'm really enjoying the Do Your Dharma. It's great.
Awesome.
I'm, really into the scheduling, and I find that monthly timesheet, like I don't want to miss a day when I start
Yeah.
things off. And so it's
Nice.
really keeping me on track. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. It's the first time I've actually put it into kind of a cohesive system, and it's cool to actually see how it all the pieces can fit together in a way, because I do everything kind of sporadically, but for me to have had to systemize it in a way that I can teach it has been really good for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then for a next time, it'll be even more streamlined because I
Yeah,
kind of have the base down.
because actually the spreadsheet that you created with the scorecard and all that, there's a few things I actually want you, because the percentages, I'd like to format it so that there's an average of the percentages in each goal. Does that make
Which,
sense?
sorry, which one are you talking about?
The 12 week scorecard that you formatted, where it's got the goals and the tactics and
Oh, and that we're using right now?
yeah, do you know the one I'm talking about? I'll send
Okay.
it. I'll send it to you, and I'll see if I can kind of put a note on it because I'm doing it all by hand. Like each week, I'm like dividing
Oh,
to
so for
find
each week
that
to see.
average. Yeah.
There is a tab in there that keeps a track of all your running scores.
Okay, maybe I'm missing that.
Yeah, it's in red. I think it's in the beginning, or maybe you haven't might be using an earlier version.
Oh,
But the
okay.
version I have, maybe I'll send you my version,
Okay.
and it has a tab in there with all your scores, so then you can just easily put them
Oh, okay.
into the accountability sheet.
Okay, and that's in the first page or like the
The beginning of it,
on the
yeah.
beginning? Okay, cool. I'll
I'll
look
send
at
you
it again.
mine just to
Okay.
make sure. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, Shauna.
Hey, how's it
Hi.
going?
Good. Small group today.
Yeah.
I'm guessing some more people will come on, but it's late finishing
Maybe
dinner.
they thought it was yesterday because on the website it does say yesterday, but then you sent an email.
I sent an email and I talked to a few people. I talked to Becca yesterday, and although she put a note that she can't come. No, I think people know that it's today.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, that's okay.
Yeah.
I was just
Semi-private.
I was just wondering where I can get an Olive to help me out.
Oh my gosh, I know. And Olive is awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I need You.
Yeah, a techie helper.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and start.
Okay.
We are finishing up the time bending, time mastery, air element, and now we're moving into water, which is nice because air and time can be very kind of left brain, heady, logistical, and I think for the yogis the most challenging. So the flow is like, yogis are so naturally drawn to being in flow, and it is just, it's more fluid, it's more easeful, it's more downward flowing. It's more right brain. Hey, Shauna, other Shauna.
Hi.
Shauna's.
The Shaunas. Yeah, so that's where we're going, and I'll just step back and get a big perspective of kind of where we've been, where we're going, and our exploration of all the elements. So we started in space element and decluttering and moving into fire element of our dharma and doing a lot of the inquiry practices around, what are we here to do and what do we want to really work on, and then zooming in on some specific goals and then structuring our time around that. And now we're moving into flow. So what is flow? Flow is a lot of different things. And I don't know, I'd love to hear if anyone wants to volunteer. What is flow to you? Water. Yeah, it's definitely the water element.
Easing into what you're doing so that it just happens naturally and you don't have to have too much thought around it.
Yeah.
Like I thought, that's what I thought too, like no obstacles, nothing really. I mean, you can have obstacles, but like no, like you're not thrown off, like you're.
Well, like if you just think of a river, and if you put like an obstacle or a rock, what does the water do?
It's turbulent.
Well, no, it goes around it.
It goes around.
Yeah. Well, there's a little turbulent, but that's the thing about water. It's very malleable and adaptable and flexible, and it just finds a way around. But it's powerful too, because water can, over time, chip away at those obstacles. It's can smooth out rocks and Anyone
And
else?
I think it would be a little more effortless too. It would just
right. Definitely.
It's kind of already a part of you. It just happens as you go along.
Yeah. So flow, the term flow was coined by, and he's got a really hard name to pronounce, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And I think he's maybe a Russian, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And he has a TED Talk. Has anyone heard of this guy and flow? And he talks about flow as being the key to happiness. And he coined the term flow, actually, because several people describe their flow experiences using the metaphor of a water current carrying them along. So it's very fitting how, it's really the water element that we're going into with flow. And I'm going to just read a quote by him. Contrary to what we usually believe, the best moments in our lives are not the passive, receptive, relaxing times, although such experiences can also be enjoyable if we have worked hard to attain them. The best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. Optimal experience is thus something that we make happen. For a child, it could be placing with trembling fingers the last block on a tower she has built, higher than any she has built so far. For a swimmer, it could be trying to beat his own record. For a violinist, mastering an intricate musical passage. For each person, there are thousands of opportunities, challenges to expand ourselves. So actually, Shauna Kelly, it's actually not so much effortless. So how he describes it, if you think of like what are these called? The Y charts or graph? Yeah. And flow is when, so this is challenge and this is skill. So the more challenge, and then the more skill, and then flow is what happens when you have the right amount of challenge and the right amount of skill.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll post the TED Talk for you guys to actually watch. And so flow, getting in flow state, because if you're doing something that's not very challenging, it's not very stimulating, it's kind of boring.
Right.
You kind of check out.
Mhm.
And then if you're doing something that's too challenging, you get frustrated and overwhelmed
Mm-hmm.
or stressed. Now, if you're really good at something, and so that's why, if you're really good at something and you're kind of doing something below your, like, it's just so effortless, which kind of, Shauna, you said it's effortless. Then again, it's not, we're not being pushed. We're not really stimulated enough. But again, if it's beyond our skill level, then we just feel incompetent, and then that doesn't feel good either.
Mm-hmm.
So finding flow is finding that place where we are challenging ourselves just enough.
Mm.
And we're not, and this is a really good thing to talk about, because especially coming out of all these new skills and the time bending, where it can feel like too much, and it might have led to feeling frustrated or overwhelmed, or even the coursework in general, like having all these lessons and all this work to do. And so that we have to find that place for each one of us individually where we're taking on just the right amount of challenge that meets the skill level that we're at.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're all different, it's like we all have to, hey, Madeline, figure that out. So checking in with yourself is, is this, am I taking on too much? Am I trying to do too much where I've taken myself out of flow because the challenge is too much for me at the current skill level that I'm at?
Mm.
And then also know where, if I'm just not really going anywhere, if I'm getting kind of complacent and bored, then maybe I need to increase the amount of challenge. And we can even look at our goal setting like this, that, the goals that we set should challenge us just enough so that we can maintain that flow state. So Madeline, are you familiar with the flow Mihai? Chick sent me hi.
What?
I'll put his name in the chat. Okay, so Mihaly.
No, I'm not. I know flow. But...
Mihaly.
Oh yes, that guy with the big long name. Yeah.
Chick sent me hi.
Yes. Okay, now I know what you're talking about.
There, that's the name. Like when you read his name, it's almost impossible to even. So I actually Googled how do you pronounce that name, and now I have like the whole. Here, I'll put that in there too. The whole how to pronounce it. One sec. I'll copy and paste that. So are you familiar with his TED Talk and his work on flow, Madeline?
Well, I'm familiar with flow, but I don't think I've seen his TED Talk.
Okay. So what can you tell?
I read his book a long time ago, I think.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, cool. Okay. So you're familiar with the whole skill challenge, right amount of skill, right amount of challenge.
Yes. Yeah.
To be in flow state.
Right. Yeah.
So he talks about there being, I'll actually put this in the chat too, and we'll go over this. This is the 8 elements of being in a flow state. So you have clarity of goals and immediate feedback. So clarity of goals is something that we have been working on. So immediate feedback is something that I've keep coming across in, if you've heard the term deliberate practice and the 10,000 hour rule that Malcolm Gladwell made popular in the book Outliers. Mm-hmm. To attain mastery, it takes 10,000 hours, but it's not just 10,000 hours. It's 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. And that's a very important distinction. And part of deliberate practice is getting immediate feedback. And this often comes in the form of a coach, or here's like sports. It's easy to kind of get instant feedback in art. And knowing exactly like what the goal is, like having the specific, so knowing when you get there, knowing, and that's the thing, sometimes we set goals that are vague, and things like, I want to be more present. I get that one a lot. And it's too vague because we don't know when we have arrived. And so having the specificity where there's the feedback to know if we've gotten there or not is really important. And that's why it's easier to measure those things as far as like practices, like I'm meditating 10 minutes a day. That would be a better goal than being more present because it's more specific. Number 2 is a high level of concentration on a limited field. And so when I think of flow and when I get into flow, you're so immersed in your moment to moment experience. Like you're not distracted. You're like and sometimes you've probably heard the term like in the zone, and sports people will say that a lot, like being in the zone. So this is really important with not being distracted when we're working, and single tasking and not kind of working with lots of tabs open and flipping and switching between one thing and the next, because we can't possibly get in flow state if we're doing that. And then balance between skills and challenge, we talked about. The feeling of control. And I'll read what it says here because it's sometimes we think of control as well, he says the expression control is easily misunderstood. It can put many people off by its association with compulsive domination or nervous attention. Control in flow has none of these qualities. It is a state of security and relaxation with a complete absence of worry. The paradox known in Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, as control without controlling. Which I had to, what do you guys think of that? Like, how would you interpret that? I'd love to hear.
Sorry, can you just repeat that, Diane?
Yeah. Characteristic for flow is the feeling of heightened control over one's actions. The expression control is easily misunderstood. It can put many people off by its association with compulsive domination or nervous attention. Control in flow has none of these qualities. It is a state of security and relaxation with a complete absence of worry. The paradox known in Zen Buddhism as control without controlling. Go ahead, Shauna.
I would just almost call that feeling secure than control. That's
right. It doesn't really sound like control.
Mm-hmm. That's the word I would use, like feeling
for me, it's like when I think of control, it's almost like a competence, like say in yoga, like you have control over your body and you can like control your big toe and your little finger, and you have that kind of like mastery over the body. I don't know if that's what they're referring to, so I'm not really 100% clear on that one. Mm-hmm. Anyone else have any opinion or thought on that one? Control without controlling. It's like a Zen koan.
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking of just feeling competent.
Yeah.
Is that what did you just say competent?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you said confidence.
No, yeah, totally.
Sorry, I got a little.
No, that's okay.
I said confidence earlier. That's probably why you thought that.
Okay, yeah. Like being like in the driver's seat and just kind of cruising down the road and not really thinking of anything else and not being distracted, but not gripping on tightly. You're just going, and you kind of know where you're going. Like you're in the groove.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe like a control over. Like you decided that you're going to do it. It isn't something that someone else is making you do. I don't know.
It's coming
and
from
I think that's kind of what you're saying. It's like you're in the driver's seat. Mm-hmm. Shauna, what'd you say?
I was going to say, sometimes it doesn't even come from us. It comes from something deeper. It comes from source. That's what I feel like.
The control, you mean? Or
like when you're in the zone and you're in the drive and you think you're in the driver's seat, but it really is, you're like just so connected to everything and you're in such sync with nature. It's like not even, like you don't have to control. It just does it. Everything just falls into place.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, there's another thing that I put here, agency over the situation or activity. So maybe that's another, maybe easier way to understand it.
I've mentioned this before when I've been at when I've hung out with helicopter pilots, and I feel like that there's this one guy that would fly, and I'm just like, man, like you're in the zone like all day long. They're like, they have to land right beside people, like an inch away from people, and they're like kind of, I feel like they're just, something is moving through them to be able to do that. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
They definitely have to be in the zone to be in those machines.
I was also thinking like surfers and that, because my husband surfs, and that's sort of what like they talk about. I mean, you can watch a surfer who's skilled, but you know, anything can go wrong at any time. But when it all comes together, it's kind of, I don't know, like, well, flow would be a perfect word for it, because going with it. But I mean, you're in control, but you're not really in control.
Right.
All kinds of factors can come at you and change everything in a moment. So
yeah. But it's like that. It requires a certain amount of skill to be able to do that. You know what I mean? Like to be able to be in that flow state, whether it's a surfer or a helicopter driver, like you need to know what you're doing to be able to be in that place where you can almost, you can get in the zone. And then the number 5 is effortlessness, which is interesting because it's both skill and effortlessness. So flow involves flexibility and ease. Everything works harmoniously and effortlessly. A tennis match or a solo performance on stage may look strenuous from the outside, yet if in fact the player is in flow, or he or she does not experience any particular strain. Actually, I don't know. I find often with people that are masters, it looks effortless. If you see people that are like dancers or even surfers, like they make it look so easy. The activity runs smoothly, guided by an inner logic. All necessary decisions arise spontaneously from the demands of the activity without any deliberate reflection. So it's like you're just, I think that's, Shauna, what you were saying, how it's like you're so, something's moving through you that is guiding you. And then an altered perception of time. So where time disappears, if you ever have been in that flow state where you're so immersed in your moment-to-moment experience and you just forget about time, and either hours can go by or a short amount of time just feels like a long, long time. So the sense of timelessness. A melting together of action and consciousness. So complete involvement creates a state where there's no room for worry, fear, distraction, or self-conscious rumination. Performers do not feel separated from their actions. They are one with their performance. This feeling of unity can expand to a person's surroundings as well as to a whole group of people working together. Have you ever like been in flow and then all of a sudden taken yourself out of flow by actually thinking about what you're doing? And then, you all of a sudden start, like you step away and then become the witness of what, instead of being so immersed in it. Yeah. And then the last one is the autotelic quality of flow experiences, which is from the Greek word autos, self, and telos, goal. Not only achieving the goal of an activity is rewarding, but the activity itself is fulfilling. Flow is therefore immediate return on investment. So important there is, the process moving towards our goal should be just as rewarding as the goal itself. So that's one aspect of flow and water. And if you just think of water, what are the other qualities of water?
I think we said this already because it's so versatile. It can be in so many different states. It could be in a vapor, in solid and a liquid, and
yeah, totally. And change shapes.
Change shapes, yeah.
Yeah. And so what we're going to explore with that this month is identity, and having an identity that's fluid and flexible and malleable. And that has been proven in neuroplasticity, that and having, when we have a growth mindset, realizing that change is possible. And fixed mindset, on the other hand, is thinking that this is who we are and we're stuck in our ways and we're always going to be like this and we're always going to have the same problems, and and that we have no agency over who we are. But growth mindset recognizes that everything is learned, skills are learned, any personality trait can be learned and changed. And it's really cool because there's hard proof and studies that have shown this. So whether you believe it or not, the truth is that our identity is very changeable and malleable. And if we understand that, we can, it's very empowering and liberating, because we can decide that we can be whoever we want to be. And we simply have to do certain things that allow us to take on the identity of the person that can reach our goals. And so that's something that we're going to explore. And that has a lot to do with our environment, the environment we're in, because another aspect of flow, if you just think of like two water droplets close together, what happens? They just like coalesce. They're cohesive. And connectivity is a huge part of water element. And if you even think of like the chakra system, water element is in the second chakra, which is all around creativity and creation and sexuality and relationships. So something that we're going to explore is the importance of relationships, and in so many different ways. And that's actually next week's lesson. And I know I said that we're going to read Daring Greatly next, but I think it fits better that we read The Big Leap this month. So if you've started, maybe just stop and start The Big Leap, because he talks a lot about things that relate to flow. Madeline, you've read The Big Leap, right?
Yeah. I keep on thinking about, being in the zone of excellence, and just the way Gay Hendricks, it's so good. I could read that book over and over again.
Yeah. How
How we work in our zone of excellence
Genius.
most of the time.
Oh yes, yeah.
But then you find flow. I think it's flow, where you realize your zone of genius, and working to a point where now he is probably in his zone of genius most of the day. 80 to 100% of the day. I just think that's just a wonderful goal, like a wonderful way to live. So I really like that book.
Yeah, I know, it's awesome. Yeah, exactly. And the more you get that concept, at least for me, I really looked at my work life and really started to notice when I'm not in my zone of genius, and when I'm even doing things that I'm in my zone of incompetence, or the things I'm just so not good at, and it's a struggle and it feels hard and it takes forever, and it feels like I'm not using my time well. And in those ways, as we're able to, that's when we start to delegate and outsource so that we can be more in our zone of genius. And, that's not always possible right off the bat, but eventually that's something that we really, really want to work towards, is how can I take the things off my plate that don't stimulate me, that don't challenge me, that don't really excite me, and so I can spend more time in my zone of genius. So that's something to really start to pay attention to. There's a really good exercise. Start to track your time, and actually for a few days, see how much of the time are you spending in things that you're just totally not into, you don't particularly like, And then how much of the time are you in things that are like blah, like whatever, just neutral? And then how much of the time are you spending in things that really are engaging and exciting and stimulating, and you feel like you're really growing in those, in those tasks? And yeah, we should try to move the lever where we're spending over 50%. And I've heard different things. It's at least 60%. I think it's Dan Sullivan, maybe strategic coach. He talks about you should spend 60% of your time in those areas where it's really exciting. And this is our life that we're talking about here. And a lot of people, when people are not intentional, they think that their life just has to encompass certain things, and they don't have control over really building life that is just filled with stuff they love. But you see it, the people that actually have succeeded at that are able to do that. So it is possible, and it's just becoming aware, first of all, of what we're doing and how we're spending our time, and then looking at, okay, how can I just do more of the things that I love and that are really my zone of genius? Because that's when we are actually the most valuable to the world. And we're not only valuable to the world, but we are the most happy and fulfilled. Yeah, Shauna.
I just I'm still reading the Stephen Cope book, and I really like it. I'm almost done. But, it just reminds me of like when you're doing your dharma. That's what your zone of
totally
is like, when you're actually doing the dharma.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. So with the cohesiveness and relationships, so next week, that's where I was going with all this. Gay Hendricks and his wife, Katie, they have the Hendricks Institute, and they've written some books and they do a lot of relationship stuff. And so they have a video series, and they're short videos that's actually by his wife, Katie, called The 4 Pillars of Integrity. And they're really, really great. A lot about emotional intelligence, and their approach to relationships is really, I think, amazing. And apparently they say that they haven't had an argument or said one critical thing to each other in over 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's going to be, I did not create a video for next week, so I want you guys to watch that instead, those videos. And they're short videos. There's quite a few of them, but they're short. They're just I think a few minutes each or something. I saw them about a year ago, so I don't remember exactly. But also relationships are important to our well-being. I mean, we know that the number one factor to happiness is the strength of our social relationships and the depth and our social connections. And we are so influenced by the people that we are around, and our identity is very much created by the people that we are around. So when we want to do something, if we have a certain goal, we need to put ourselves in environments and in communities and around people that have the goals, or that have attained the goals, or are working towards the goals that we want. That's the fastest way. Did anyone read Slipstream Time Hacking by Ben Hardy? I think I put that post or that link up. He talks about basically how you can skip 10 years. And he gives some examples of how, when you decide you want something, if you just put yourself right in that environment around those people, you can skip 10 years of someone that would just try to do it organically and work towards moving in that direction. So, and in that way, that's time bending for sure. Does that make sense? Oh, yeah. And I'm not explaining it very well, but how we can, basically move across time barriers when we're really intentional about the environments that we put ourselves in.
Well, and I think if you have the right, oh, sorry, Madeline.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you have certain relationships that align with where you want to be going,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just like mutually fulfilling. You know, you're both propelling each other in a certain direction, and it's hard. Well, I just think about like my marriage. I mean, if we decide that we're not going to drink for a month or two, it's impossible if one of us doesn't get on board, because
Totally.
A, we're our favorite drinking partners, and two, like, you know, if we're both there, if we're both in the same mindset, then it's great. But if one of us is just trying to do it on its own, it's such an uphill battle.
Yeah, it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
So true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Madeline, what were you going to say?
Yeah. Oh, no, I was just thinking about that, about how, geez, I probably could have saved myself a lot of time if I created a community, 10 years ago. I'm slogging away.
Yeah.
But anyway, where I find community is definitely, some people in my environment, but online. And I wonder, well, and also this, of course, this group here, for sure, like, is kind of my guiding light. But if that is just as valuable, like, I always see these people or hear or listen or read, and I just think, like, I want to hang out with that person. I don't even know where they are.
Yeah.
I just wondered if other people found that too, like, or if people have like communities right where they are, if it makes a difference. I don't know.
I don't think it may. There's social contagion is I don't know if you're familiar with that term. Basically saying that we're totally influenced by people in our social circle, and proximity has nothing to do with it. So it gives examples of if someone in your social circle is divorced, like, and they can live on the other side of the country, you have a 40% higher likelihood of getting a divorce.
Right.
And same thing with like obesity. You have like I can't remember exact numbers, but, and this is not even necessarily in your town or that you see them. So I think that, it's okay. Like the virtual communities are fine, because that's how we're,
I guess it's retreats and conferences and that, where you feel like you're connecting with the wider world. And that's, I really, feed on that.
Oh
too.
yeah. No, and there's definitely, in person is always more powerful, but we can't always do that. So yeah. But I think also what you said that just made me think of something of, like, you see people reading and how we feed our brains with what we're taking in and what we're reading, what we're listening to, what we're watching. And, it's like having the mentors in our heads and at our fingertips, which is so cool that we have access to some of the best, all the best teachings in the world. And so being very mindful around feeding ourselves the things that really keep us, because again, everything that we're taking in is becoming us, and we're processing it, and it's shifting our belief system, and which is then shifting our identity, and then impacts the behaviors that we take, which then determines the results that we have. So we can do it virtually through, whether it's just listening to audios or videos or reading books, but then what you don't get is like the instant feedback. And that's a big important part of it, is the feedback is having like a back and forth relationship, like a mastermind or like a coach or like a community where you are, it's like you said, Shauna, it's mutually beneficial, where you're both getting something and you're adding to, and
and I find a lot of the changes I'm making right now are kind of out there compared to a lot of my friends. And so, I'm not trying to judge them or anything, but at the same time, I'm trying to encourage myself in the changes that I want to make. And so I have found a lot of support, like through, this group and other like podcasts or Facebook pages. And yeah, if I didn't have those to sort of reinforce that this is how I want to eat, and these are changes I'm trying to make, I think it would be very easy to just slip back into old ways and just
definitely, exactly, because our environment shapes us. Like that is has the biggest impact on us is our environment. So yes, if everyone around us is doing the things that we used to do, and then we've evolved out of that, and now we're somewhere else, then we will default to those behaviors, unless we're intentionally like seeking out the environments and the communities and the people and the conversations that really keep us moving in the direction that we want to be moving in.
Yeah, and I find some of the relationships that I've had, friendships I've had with people, but maybe not necessarily were as close with them. Like one gal in particular, I've become really close the last couple of years because suddenly I'm relating to everything that she's been pursuing for so long. And so there's all those changes too, or, I guess your relationships are always shifting, but.
Yeah, they are. And I think being willing to allow them to shift, because sometimes we have guilt, like for example, you'll feel it when people aren't on board with your goals, and there's I don't know whether it's jealousy or judgment, or I don't know if you've ever a naysayer or negativity, and you don't want to be around those people.
No. Yeah.
And sometimes we can feel guilty for kind of wanting to cut off ties and spend less time with those people. But when we understand how important the relationships are to who we're becoming, then sometimes we need to let those relationships go and realize that they just don't fit who you are, because now you're different.
Yeah.
And then intentionally seeking out the ones that, hey, who can inspire me? Who can I learn from? Who is going where I'm going? So that's a really, really big part of the relationship. So making sure that within our relationships, the ones that we love and the ones that are important to us, that we can be more, and I love what you'll see in the 4 pillars of integrity, and he talks a lot about how the emotional intelligence part, where we take full responsibility, and that's one of the things he says in the book, is you take 100% responsibility in your relationships, and the other person takes 100%. So it's 200%. And sometimes we will look at relationships as like, I'm doing more and you're not doing enough. And then we put blame, and there's resentment and criticism. But he talks about having full responsibility in the way that you approach those kind of situations where you feel you're triggered, is you say, I'm feeling, you first have to really understand what you're feeling. And that is the first step with emotional intelligence, is recognizing that sometimes we think it's anger, but it's often fear, whether it's fear of abandonment that we're taking on from childhood, or other fears that we have that are on a more subconscious level, but starting to really understand and then just talking about what we're feeling. So it's no longer, you made me feel like this, or you did this to me. And I love it how he talks about an argument is basically one person convincing the other person that they wronged them. And so who in their right mind would be like, yeah, I wronged you, or but you're trying to convince the other person to say like, yeah, it was my fault. But nobody wants to do that. So.
Well, and sometimes the other party doesn't even think that. I just had a conversation.
No, they never do.
My 12-year-old, they had some anti-bullying the other day, and there was an opportunity in this presentation where kids could go and apologize to other kids for for bullying them. And she felt that this one girl, you know, sort of owed her an apology, and she waited and she didn't show up. And so she was so upset. And I said, you know, sometimes you might wait your whole life and you're not going to get that apology. So
Yeah.
you have to go on.
I wonder how that went over. My sense is, I don't know how many kids would actually.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how
Maybe.
genuine it would be either. I'm sure they apologize to their friends.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, exactly. So that's something that, you know, you would want to ideally both be on board with that approach to a relationship.
Well, and wasn't it in our first book we read too, where he talked about forgiving people even if you never have that conversation with them?
Yeah.
And letting go of that. And I thought that was such a great thing because sometimes you don't get apologies from people and you hang on to it for so long, waiting. It's never going to happen.
Right.
And so it's just easier to let it go. And
well, I think a lot of the time people don't even realize they've done anything wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Madeline.
I think this part, I think this thing what we're talking about is so key. And for me, it's probably been the biggest transformation over the last few months to actually really realize that I am 100% responsible for me and not responsible for other people. Like, you know, I'm not going to hurt anybody and I'm responsible for my kids, but and not staying in that victim place, because nobody else can make me feel like that except for me. Yeah. So like just a little example, this morning I was so proud that, you know, it's sometimes stressful getting ready in the morning, getting everything going. And my husband was leaving for a few days and we just had this interaction that was just not good. And I laughed and he laughed and I went for a walk, and normally I would stew about, you know, what he said and, you know, and it would affect me. But I came in for like 100% responsibility for only my part. And was I proud of how I behaved? And the answer was no, I was. I could have done it so many different ways. And as soon as I came back from my walk, I texted him and said, like, I'm really sorry about that. What I meant to say was this. And I let it go, and I didn't think about him texting me back. I didn't care if he also apologized. Like, I just let go of the rest of it because I was only responsible for me, and it felt so good. Yeah. And you know, I did hear from him later, and you know, it was all good, but it didn't matter to me if it was or not.
Yeah, I know, that's awesome.
And that was huge for me, because it was not going to hijack my day, because I had a day ahead of me.
Yeah,
but it's
totally.
Such a feeling of freedom.
Yeah.
To not have other people responsible for making me feel good.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, the reason I can't get ahead today, or the reason I can't get my work done, like, it's ridiculous.
I know. And we will want to blame someone or something, or I think there's a book called Extreme Ownership, which is really about like taking full ownership for everything that happens to you and everything, you know, how you feel and your circumstances. And it is very empowering and liberating. And I found because I try to truly live that way, I always get a good response. Like when I actually admit to my part in an argument, or in like, you know, when there was, you know, some weird feelings between my husband, like I do it with my husband, and he always comes back with admitting his part too. And it's great, because without any expectation on my end too. But it's like when we do that, and we do take full, because nobody wants to be blamed. Like and people will right away go on defense mode when they are being blamed, because they, you know, I think we all think we're doing the best we can.
There was a phrase once by this guy. His name was Alain de Botton, and he wrote the best book on love ever. It's just so good.
What's it called?
I'm trying to remember. I just heard him on a podcast. Alain de Botton, and he actually wrote it when he was 23. Wow. And then I think he wrote some other things after that. But if you ever listen to the podcast, it's with Krista Tippett on Being.
Yep.
It is such I promise you, like with relationships, it's such a good podcast to listen to.
Can you post it on our?
Oh, we're normal. You know.
Can you put it on our Facebook page?
Yeah.
Cool.
I've listened to it a couple of times, and I don't normally listen to anything more than once.
No.
And now
Is
I
it
forgot
recent?
what I was going to say. I forgot what the quote was. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter.
If you think of it, tell us.
Yeah.
Is it a recent one?
I'll write it in the chat.
A recent podcast?
No, it's not that recent now.
Okay.
It's probably from about a year ago.
Okay.
But I just listened to it again recently.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll check it out. So yeah, relationships. And so that's another aspect of flow. What else? Letting go. And that's kind of that effortlessness that we have referred to a few times, of surrender. And such an important piece, because we've worked a lot on the striving and the efforting and the goals and the pushing forward. And it, we ultimately want to find that balance of effort and ease, of working towards something and also letting go. And it's like in the Bhagavad Gita and in the great work of your life, it's, we're entitled to our actions, but not the fruits of our actions. So we need to be willing to let go of the results and not be attached to what happens, to the outcome, but just, and this is why it's important that we enjoy the process of getting there, because if we don't enjoy the process of getting there and then we don't get what we want, it'll be basically all for nothing. Hey, Becca.
Hello.
Hi. So that's a big part. And that is something that I personally have a lot of work to do in that area. Well, I think probably, I would imagine many of us do, because surrender and letting go is one of the hardest things to do. That's why they say Shavasana is the hardest pose, because it's really hard to let go and to surrender and to trust that it's all going to work out. And having that sense of faith is really, really big. And I grew up in a very kind of atheist household, so this idea of faith was definitely not a thing. But as I've gotten older, and especially more and more recently, there's so much more of a sense of, because I'm realizing the importance of surrender and trust, and it is faith. It comes down to faith, of that you're being held by something bigger and supported by something bigger, and to lean back into that.
I think trust is a big, like when you talk about trust, and I think, definitely for myself, I grew up being really skeptical, and I've had some, tough times. And so it's taken a lot for me to have trust in other people, trust in my relationships, and like you say, letting go. And yet when you do, it's very liberating, and
Mm-hmm.
and then things don't seem quite as, I don't know, monumental if they don't quite work out, or if they,
Right.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so huge, like that trust, and I think especially for like the A-type overachievers, we want to control everything. That's me. And we tend to like kind of micromanage our lives because it gives us that some sense of control. But when we realize that, we don't really have so much control, and to let go, to be willing to let go of that need to do that, it's so hard, but it's a practice. But if we can start to remember to do that and have these little ways of doing it, whether even if it's like physically in the body, or through a meditation, or a moment of exhaling and like literally releasing tension from the body, we can start to rewire those control patterns. And then easeful living is also a part of flow. And easeful living is the 10th habit that I teach in Align and Thrive. And it's a lot of different things. It's a lot of perspective too. It's how we choose to look at the world. And a lot of it is like choosing to trust and choosing to have faith and choosing to believe in a greater good. And then there's also like tangible habits that come with easeful living of, taking mini breaks to exhale and to drop into our bodies and to be present. And then there's ways that we can actually structure easeful living into our lives, like not overscheduling ourselves and clearing our space. Like that creates, whenever there's a sense of chaos or overwhelm, for me, it's like if I can clean my house and if I can have just like a space that's clear and tidy, like that's huge. Like that makes a big difference and that helps. And that creates a sense of ease. Having things in order in a way. And it's like those little ways that we can just feel like, and I'm coming back to the word control, but when life can be crazy and chaotic and we don't know what's going to happen. So when there's something in our lives that we feel like we have control over, it's settling to the nervous system. Go ahead, Shauna.
I was just thinking about like the whole month of January I've been sick, and just really feels like I'm not in control. And I feel though fortunate that I do have a perspective that I'm in compression right now, and then I'm gonna come like whatever I just learning something new, and I'm just being shown something that it's put in front of me, and I'm going to work through it. And I have this deep sense of health and a faith in the intelligence of my system to get me through this. And I feel quite fortunate to develop that. And it took a lot of years and doing lots of courses and lots of the biodynamic craniosacral therapy. But I can really feel that deep within me, that and trust that intelligence and something bigger than just this Shauna lifetime.
Awesome.
It's pretty cool. I think that's one of the biggest things in life.
Yeah.
The teacher I just did, the only week I didn't feel sick was when I'm helping assist the courses now and so the owner of the school came, and he always just says, trust in the tides, and that's like our flow.
Yeah.
Our flow of our body. Yeah. And I just love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if anyone watched the moon cycles, and yeah. So that is the tides of, of basically the cycles of the moon or the cycles of nature, and being in flow with that, which is recognizing when there is, whether it's a contraction that's happening as a result of a sickness, or when we're just feeling contracted, or we're feeling a desire to go in, to trust that, and to not feel like, oh, I need to always be like out there and extroverted or social or a certain way, that we can allow ourselves to withdraw, because that's what's needed. That's the pull, and we need to do that, because the more we can actually pull in when there's a natural desire to, it's like the rubber band, like the more you can stretch it, the more it kind of goes back. But I don't know if that's the best analogy actually, but Anna was talking about this, the more we can actually pulse in, the more we can expand out. And it's like with breathing, the more you can actually exhale fully, the bigger breath you can then take. If it's all shallow breathing, there's only so much that we can breathe. So that's a really big part of flow. And having the pulsation of going in and out and our energy going up and fully being engaged and then dropping all the way down into disengaged, into like relaxation, recovery, rejuvenation, and then going all the way out and all the way up into full exertion, effort, and then going all the way back down. And that's really like, we want to find those, basically the edges, and those edges being able to pulsate between the two allows us actually to find that place in the middle. And in the book Peak Performance, I think I was telling you guys about before, it's growth. The equation for growth is stress plus rest. And the stress is, it's like the athletes, they have to stress their muscles. And then they have to fully, like, their recovery is really, really important. Like, they make sure they are getting tons of sleep and they are just like completely dropping out to get their full recovery, because they know how important it is for them to show up fully and be their best. And we need to do that as well. And I know for me personally, I don't do enough of the turn off, recovery, rest, relaxation. And for some people, it's the other tendency. It's like they never fully push themselves enough, and they never go to that full exertion. And it's kind of always in this maybe place in the middle, or it might be more towards the complacency side of the spectrum. So that's a big part. And recognizing that depending on our constitution, we're all different as far as what we can, what we're capable of. People with like a good, strong, hardy constitution, like a kapha constitution, they can handle a lot more effort and exertion. A vata type that doesn't have, that tends towards more of the frailty or the burnout or like the petering out, like they can't push themselves like a kapha person can. So we need to know ourselves as well and not compare ourselves with other people for that reason.
I was just gonna say, like, I just got back from Nelson working, and my partner is very kapha, like exactly that. He just is he's like embodies everything we've just talked about this whole hour.
Yeah.
And I like got back home, and like he had built like 3 majorly gorgeous, creative, awesome things. And then I was in Nelson and I got sick and I couldn't, like, I had to cancel a bunch of clients, and I came home and I was like, we just talked about it like about half an hour ago, but yeah, I was not in a great mood, and I started to like nag at him. And then I realized what I was doing. It's just like, I wasn't 100% owning myself. And I was just like, I'm like, this guy, like, who is he? Like, he just is so even keel. And then, you know what? I'm like, I'm not like that. And that's okay. I'm
exactly
so wonderful in who I am. Like, I make connections with people, and he's very introverted and he's scared to make a connection. So like, it's not like I'm comparing us, but we each have our own, bright, shiny,
totally
personality traits. Yeah. We're both, he has his kapha go forever and never get tired.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to honor our own constitution and this really comes down to us listening to our bodies and realizing when we're going too hard and when we're taking on too much, and it's gonna have an effect. And sometimes that impact is beneath the surface, and it builds and builds and builds until eventually it's not beneath the surface anymore, and it's something more serious. And at that point, it can often be dire. So the more we can actually listen to those subtle signals, and when things are off, when we're feeling tired, when we just need to like stop and relax and rest and maybe go to bed like an hour early or 2 hours early, or allow ourselves to sleep in and maybe not work out so hard one day when we just feel burnt out. Because we tend to operate from our brains a lot in our culture. It's like very analytical, or again, it's like everyone should do this, like everyone should do this kind of exercise, or everyone should push themselves this hard, and recognizing that we're all different, and it's more important that we trust ourselves and learn to listen to our bodies and attune to our own intuition. And that's the most powerful thing that we can do.
I thought it was interesting over the holidays, because the flu hit me on Boxing Day, and someone was saying to me at work, "Oh, that's terrible. Your holidays were ruined." And I said, but the irony was I wasn't worried about not being at work because I was off. The kids didn't have to be at school. I didn't have all these things to do. And so the odd thing was I could actually just lay there and be sick for 4 days in bed and watch Netscape or Netflix or whatever. And it was like, it was kind of sad, but that tells me that any other time I get sick, I really don't just let myself go to bed and work through it. It's like, no, but I have to be doing this, and I should be at work, and it's just this constant angst. So you're not really getting past it, because you just kind of all the things that you should be doing when you should just be sick.
Yeah, I know. It's so true. Yeah, I know. It's tough because we have people to take care of, and we have work to go to, and we don't often allow ourselves that total downtime that we so desperately need. But it's really huge, because we're burning out our adrenals, and it has an impact. And then the last little part of water element or flow, and again, this comes back to the connectivity of the two water droplets, is creativity. And creativity is making connections, really. When you think of ideas or connections that we can put together from different things. So there's a lesson on creativity as well in this next month of what's to come. And then we're wrapping it up in March for stabilizing our growth. I know. And I've talked to a few people that are like, "Oh, I'm worried about when this course ends." And so I have some ideas. The next one is going to start in July, and I always let people repeats come back for huge discount, less than half. So, and then my idea, because this is the first time I'm creating it, do your dharma in this way, but the more I am in this and also teaching my other courses, it feels like a year-long program to me, where we can spread things out a little bit, and have it, because it feels like I'm packing a lot in. And then there's also because each month I kind of look, okay, what do I really want to include in this month? And then there's all these things that I just don't have time for, because we only have 6 months. And the truth is that it's not a once you watch the webinar, you got it. You have to keep cycling through and practice, and watching the webinar and getting familiar with the concept is a tiny piece of the puzzle. And then actually making it a part of your life takes time. It takes practice, and it takes, again, all this, what we were talking about, is being in that environment and having that sense of community and connection of people that are on the same track. So I just wanted to put that out there, because a few of you have been worried about what's going to happen when it ends. So know that it doesn't have to end.
Well, and I think, and Sean, I know you can relate to this, January, I think going into December, I was excited, all these, the new year, all these things are going to happen. And then I was sick, and I feel like I'm suffering from a bit of sad this year because it's just the winter's been so cold and gloomy here, and I haven't been out much, and my kids have science fair projects, and, and so this month has just not become what I originally envisioned it to be. But at the same time, I'm just not, I'm looking forward to, now I'm into February and things are going to die down here, and so it's not going away, but yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to being able to step back, sort of let everything gel in my brain and make things sort of happen and start to get some of the habits rolling. Because I do feel like I've been pushing a rock uphill for a bit, but
Yeah.
I think there's been all these other things that have been going on too, which have been unforeseen and kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reality is it takes time. Like, it takes time, and there's a lot of new information, and we can only do so much realistically at any given time. We can only take on so many new habits and learn so many new skills, and it's an evolution. So I think, like, not being hard on ourselves too is really important, because this is, I mean, this happens in all the classes I teach, because I love giving information away, but it can be, one of my students said, it's like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. It's like, it's like, whoa. and results in overwhelm. And that's why I'm finding myself stretching everything out longer, so that, because my intention is, how can I help people not feel overwhelmed with all this stuff, with all the new, Shweta.
Well, I was just like going, how can I like be like a type A personality? That's what I've been trying to like ask myself, or how can I be on top of things, like, so I can take this information. And I'm like, and then I'm like,
you want to be a type A personality.
What's that?
You don't want to be a type A personality.
Well, I think I chose that because both my sisters are. So I think I rebelled, and I was like, I don't want to be like them. And like, they were so they control. I was like their little puppet. They're like, what do they want me to do now? So I feel like I have to get over all of that. But I can be like, or I can be organized, and I can do learn how to get through, a day with block, the 4 B's. But I just feel like there's some resistance there. So I've really gained that awareness. Because this is really the second time I have heard this information. I have to be honest. It's not really the first time. And I wish that it all just clicked. Like, I was just like, oh, that clicks. Okay, I'm doing that now.
Yeah.
But it's definitely practice.
It's practice. Totally is practice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't learn this in the time that I'm teaching you. I'm teaching you things I've learned over years, and have slowly implemented and practiced and created my own systems. And then it's also like taking everything that I'm doing and finding your own system and finding something that works for you. Because yes, we are all different, and different things work for different people. And I'm also like, I love my thing is I love distilling or gathering information from as many of the expert sources that I'm aware of, that I know of, and then trying to pull it all together into like, what are the best pieces of all these different things, and how can I put it all together in one system? Like, that's kind of like my approach. So this is all stuff that I've gathered from different teachers, different books, different things that I've learned along the way, and my own experimenting with all of them. Yeah.
And sometimes a lot of the books have this similar, like are saying similar.
Oh, totally. And that's the thing. It's like, you read enough books on a subject, you realize that there are guiding principles of them. And that's basically what I'm looking for. It's like, what are the guiding principles of all these different areas? And then just teach those as principles in the most practical way that I can, the most, the way that's easiest to implement, because I love to make, that's also I like to make things very practical. So, and actually I forgot, I was going to ask, or address the questions in the very beginning of that I put on the Facebook forum. So motivate, how do you stay motivated? Eternal question. And there's lots of different strategies. I think scheduling it in, and then when it comes onto your calendar, you have schedule integrity or calendar integrity, where you just do it no matter what, whether you feel like it or not. And the thing is, you're not always going to feel motivated. And that's why having a system where you, like, the time blocking is really important, where it's like, this is the time that I do this. And then, I don't know if it's Stephen Pressfield that talks about this, but basically the muse learns to show up. When you show up consistently at a certain time, the muse shows up, and all of a sudden it's like you're able to do the work because you've trained yourself. And you can also, it's like the ritualization of something, where it's like at 9 o'clock, I have my cup of tea, I sit down and I do my work. And because there are definitely going to be days where you don't feel like it, and maybe more days that you don't feel like it than there will be days where you do feel like it. And realizing that that's just part of it. But, and going along with Stephen Pressfield's work, it's like you just go pro. Like you show up like a professional for yourself, and you do what needs to get done, whether despite like how you feel. And that's the thing. It's like, this is one of those times where you don't want to really pay attention to how you feel. You just do what needs to get done. And then architecting your it's like schedule. It's how you structure the schedule and your time and your ritualization of it and your environment. How it's, how can you put yourself in environments that force you to, like, you have to get work done. It's like you could put yourself in a library with no Wi-Fi or something. And it's like, how can you, and there's a term called forcing functions, which is basically what are ways that you can force yourself to do what needs to get done. Like turn off the Wi-Fi, or I don't know, just examples like that. So there's no secret, basically, to how do you stay motivated. It's having goals that are compelling enough that they're important enough to you. Because if they're not enough, if they're not exciting enough or compelling enough, or you don't have a strong enough why, you won't be as motivated to do it. But then even if there are ones, there are just days where you don't feel like it. So you have to actually look at, do I just really not care about this enough? Or am I just letting resistance take over and not being a pro? I've been listening to, my friend loaned me some Tony Robbins CDs that I've been listening to in my car. And he talks about everything that we do, and this is also talked about in the Yoga Sutras. It's either to go towards pleasure or move away from pain. Everything in our lives. We're either doing it because we think it's going to bring us pleasure, or we think it's going to help us avoid pain. So often when we like procrastinate on something, we feel like doing it is going to be painful. And so we don't do it. Or it's like we're trying to stop eating sugar. And the sugar is just so pleasurable that not having it is going to be more painful than just having it. And he talks about how to overcome that is you have to switch. You have to make the pain of not doing it worse than the pain of doing it. So think of like the costs. If I don't do this, what are the costs? What's going to be the result of doing this? And you can also think of this long term. If I don't do this over the next week, over the next month, over the next year, if I continue not doing this and continue procrastinating, where will I end up? Where does that take me? And do I really want the cost of continuing this habit of procrastination? And often, again, we will go towards instant gratification of feeling good in the moment, whether that's avoiding pain or seeking pleasure. But if we can use our mind to project into the future and to just switch, instead of thinking, say it's the chocolate that we're avoiding, that it's going to taste so good, we can actually think of the harmful effects of the chocolate. And do we really want those harmful effects? And then associate it more with pain as opposed to pleasure. So that's a tip to try. What are your biggest challenges? Anyone want to share biggest challenges around the time bending or anything that's come up so far that we can kind of finish off with, close off with? You guys are just rocking it.
This is Becca. I wanted to share, it's not necessarily a challenge, I shared it with Donna yesterday, what felt like a success of the universe aligning with my visioning, which was, I spent Sunday visioning and got very much more clear with myself that I definitely want to pursue this career work around organization development, which is like facilitation and group dynamics and diversity and inclusion, a whole range of skills of like supporting the human system that's doing work to make our world a better place. And then on Monday, I got an email from a woman who had reached out to me a year ago to see if I would put in a proposal about helping them with their strategic planning. And I had responded to the email, her initial email, and then just never heard anything back, and I almost had forgotten about it. I had actually forgotten about it until I heard from her again a year later being like, okay, we're finally ready. Like, would you be willing to put in a proposal? And so I'm going to be speaking with her tomorrow because I need to know a little bit more about what she's looking for to actually write a proposal. And I don't know if it'll turn into work, but it felt like the universe was answering me, and it was exciting.
So awesome. Love it. Yeah, that's great. So cool. I know. And it's like that trust. And I think that's that big part of knowing what we want, getting really clear on our desire, and then trusting. And a really good book that's a really fun read is How to Be a Badass. And it's a lot on, have you read that, Shanna Kelly? No. Yeah, you read it. Yeah. It's fun.
Can you say the whole title again?
How to Be a Badass.
Oh, okay. I thought it was something. I thought it was how to be a because you did like a webinar or something. How to
How to be a badass with a good ass.
I listened to that book on
You're so funny. I loved it. Oh man, it was so good.
I'm gonna post on our page.
I listened to that book on the plane.
Natalie, did everyone freeze or did I freeze?
Oh, I was just going to say, I listened to that book, or maybe it was How to Be a Badass at Making Money.
Yeah, that's so good too.
Back on the plane,
love that book.
And I just laughed. Like, she is so funny.
Yeah.
And she just makes you want to just go and blow up your life.
Yeah, totally. I know. I read both of them because I read How to Be a Badass, and then I loved it so much that I then read How to Be a Badass at Making Money. And it's so good. I highly recommend it. Good. A lot of, it's all on the law of attraction, basically. Like that's kind of her thing.
Yeah.
Which is
her story is like she was 43 by the time she moved out of her garage or something.
Yeah.
And started making some money.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And a lot of it, it's about the belief and the trust and knowing that, the universe is a co-creation with the universe. It's like you got to show up, you got to do the work also, but then also be open to what the universe is going to provide for you, and also be not attached to how it's going to show up too. That's a big part that she keeps coming back to is you want something, and sometimes we think it'll come to us in a certain way, but to be open and to it showing up in different ways, and to not, sometimes we kind of shut off anything that doesn't look like what we think it's going to look like, but to be receptive enough to entertain possibilities of it coming to us in different ways, in different forms. Yeah. Oh, you're muted.
now.
Yep.
Yeah, Becca, that's awesome. I just wanted to say, like, that's so cool when the synchronicity comes up like that. And I love, and yeah, just like, I find that so like, wow, cool. Like, it is all flowing. That is what I feel like flow is.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's happened to me this January is I've had a few different people ask me to do things. But I've had a really good friend ask me to help out with his company, which I kind of like planted the seed about it. But it's funny because it's part of my big vision, but it's happening now. And I'm kind of like, well, Donna, I think you know how I get. I think now, and like, I hate saying this word, but I get overwhelmed. And I think it's like a momism too. Whereas like I can see my mom getting like that, like she just made family dinner, and she was like, and I mean yeah, just I see myself doing that, and it's an amazing, really cool, unbelievable opportunity, and I have to believe that I can do this. I really do, and I just keep telling myself that. I'm like, he believes in me, and he wants to put me in this position that is a leader, and I have to believe that I'm capable.
Yeah.
The first thing I was thinking, I was like, oh, I don't have my company set up yet, and I don't have I'm not here yet. I'm not there yet, and
doesn't matter.
Okay, yeah, because I feel like this is like my biggest goal and dream.
Yes, doesn't matter. That stuff is just like you trying to block it.
Mm-hmm. And I think I could do both. I think I could do because I'm starting to get clients are just starting to come in, which is really nice too. And this is something totally different, but again, part of my big vision. I just want to, because in the past I've just taken on too many things, and then I get frazzled.
Yeah.
I think I'm grounded.
When this is your big thing, it's like that's what really matters, and maybe it's lots of other little things that you let go of.
Yes, I think that's the key. I think I said a big fat no today to somebody because I was like, no, because I just want these two things. Because it's supposed to be one thing, isn't it? Not two things?
Yeah.
That's what I'm curious about. Because I haven't read that book yet.
I think just be open. You know, I think because it's all a matter of how you look at it, really.
And I think it sounds too, when I was listening to you, Shauna, because I know I've been in those positions before, and it's almost like, you know, how people say, you know, I'm going to do all these things and then I'll be happy kind of thing. And we're talking about how you're happy with the process. It's like you're never going to get all your ducks in the row when the opportunity presents itself.
Totally.
Like it's going to come when it comes, and we just got to go with it. And then things will fall out, right? It'll just flow. It'll happen, and things will fall into place.
Yes.
And you won't be overwhelmed.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's a big leadership role. Like it has to do with outdoor leadership and building programs for young women and for women going through cancer. So it's like,
wow, awesome.
Yeah, it's like super cool, and I feel like it's it's a dream, and I'm just gonna believe in myself to get there. That's the first B.
Jump off the cliff and build your wings on the way down. Yeah. Thanks. Totally. And that's how you will change, is like literally throwing yourself in situations that force you to.
Yeah, I'm realizing that.
And it will change who you are. I mean, that's like how I became a coach. I just started coaching. I wasn't a coach before I started coaching.
Yeah. And I've watched you like,
from the beginning. I think, were you my very first course?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was when I just declared myself a coach. Well, I didn't. I mean, I took a course, but you know. But yeah, I mean, it's like you can't wait for permission from anyone else. Like you are the one that decides I'm going to do this. I can do this, and trust and believe, and both feed in.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the big leap, you know, having a bit of that, I think that's where a lot of this sickness is coming from, to tell you the truth, is that
Oh yeah, the upper limit, is it an upper limit? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is upper limit problem stuff.
Yeah, totally. That's okay, as long as you realize it. And then I was listening to an interview that he just did, and Gay Hendricks, not just, I don't know when he did, maybe a few years ago, but he talks about the reaction for any living being under stress is contraction. Like every animals, bugs, like everything, people. So he said we need to learn how to actually expand in the face of stress, like to literally expand. And I teach Bowspring Yoga, which is all about that. It's all about rewiring our physical patterning of contraction, where we all do the same things. We drop our chin, we tuck our pelvis, we lock our knees, we like elbows come in. So like that practice is like physically like doing all the opposite. It's like hips back, throat open, chest broad. It's, you know, when you see marathon runners or someone that's just like won something, they expand, like they literally, their bodies expand. And when you see anyone that's like ashamed or has shame or fear, they make themselves as small as possible. So the idea is what you do with your physical body impacts you. It's the shape shift to state shift. So when you can actually physically just change your body and your posture to be more expansive, that starts to rewire that patterning of wanting to contract or retreat or play small.
This is good. I like this. I'm excited to watch this recording again. Yeah, I should come to do your yoga class too.
Yeah, it's a powerful practice because it goes exactly against our patterning, and it is not a popular practice for that reason, because it is hard. Well, because the thing is, like, you show up there and you're asked to do things that you're not used to doing. I think that's the exact reason why people should do it. And it addresses the weaker parts, like our weaker muscles. Like it's very much emphasizes the posterior chain, the glutes, all these muscles that are atrophied because we live in a culture where we're sitting and we're like, our spine is going into a C curve, and we've lost these natural curves of our spine, and we do shut down. We close off our voice. We don't speak our voice. We don't take up our allotted space. We make ourselves physically small as a reflection of not having the confidence to be who we are and be authentic. So it really triggers people. But there's like a core group that love it because it's so empowering, and you feel so strong when you actually do that practice regularly, when you like stay in those moments where all you want to do is go to child's pose, but you actually just keep expanding and yeah, it's a pretty powerful practice.
Wow.
But it's so applicable to life, which is why I love it, because it's very reflective of and what we do with our bodies matters a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Fake It Till You Become It TED Talk with Amy Cuddy on body language. Have you guys seen that? And she talks about the power posture and how, people that stand in the power posture and then they go into interviews, they are basically, what's the word? I'm drawing a blank. They're seen as more confident and they're hired more. And this is simply just by standing in a power posture for 2 minutes before entering the interview. Yes. So we know that. I mean, and there's been studies that show that depressed people, they just are forced to smile for 2 minutes and it actually changes their whole chemistry. So what we do with our bodies matters, and what we, the thoughts that we entertain in our mind matters. And if we understand how to work with both of those, how to literally change our posture and change what we're doing with our body, which includes exercising and taking care of our bodies and what we're feeding with our bodies, we know all that affects our mind. And then paying attention, because you could be the healthiest person in the world and have great posture, but if you're entertaining really negative thoughts all the time and worrying and stressing and having anxiety, then you're going to be miserable. So knowing how to work with both is equally important. Oh yes, sorry, I haven't been reading the comments at all. Lastly, just to finish up, the journaling challenge. Who journals daily? And by journaling, it can be a literal, like, these are the few things I need to do today. Like, you have a moment where you're connecting with yourself, and whether that's like goal setting, or it can be, sometimes we think of journaling as like what we did in high school when we're, depressed and we have pages of
Dear diary.
Yeah, yeah. Totally. And it's not necessarily that, but it can be. It's very good, actually, has lots of benefits for emotional regulation and clearing your head and relieving stress. And so if I encourage you to do that. I have 30 days of journal prompts, questions, because it's all about the questions you ask. Questions are very powerful. Change your questions, change your life. That's a really good book. And I think it really aligns with what we're doing in this course, because it's a really great avenue for self-exploration, self-discovery, and visioning your future, and strategizing your goals, and shifting your identity, and all of that. So it ties in so many of the different practices that we have been discussing and practicing, and puts it in a really great keystone daily practice. All right. Any last closing words? All right. Have an awesome night. It was great to connect. So the next meeting is on Valentine's Day, which is a Wednesday, because she can only meet on Wednesdays, which is why it was supposed to be yesterday, but now it's Wednesday. It's Valentine's Day, so I don't know if you guys have Valentine's plans, or it's with us. It's going to be she teaches a course called the Yoga of Money. So she's going to be talking all about money and money mindset. And she's very entertaining. She's also a stand-up comedian. So it'll be good. Yeah. And a yoga teacher. She's a yoga teacher. All right. So I will see you guys then. And until then, have a good night.
Yeah.
Bye.